Okay, here goes. All right, so this is in reference to project 2, but it's in reference to actually any project for any of my programming related courses, honestly, where you have to use a tester together with keys. Okay, so I combine a couple different ideas. I haven't seen anyone else do this, although Dr. Robinson does because he took it from me. All right, instructions. Everybody gives students instructions. You know how those work. Those are standalone. The file doesn't depend on anything else. Those are your detailed specifications for what has to be in your project. I give you starter code with function headers, and so that code is where you write your project. Do not change the name. Do not change the name of this file. Okay? I'm going to use that in the tester. You're going to use this in the tester. Okay, so don't do that. Okay, the tester file is going to call your code, and when you first open the box, when you first open all the files, your starter code is going to call the keys. Now, sometimes additionally, the tester file might also reference the key. So you have to be careful, but if the tester file does not reference the key, then when you're done writing your code, you can get rid of the key and see if everything stands on its own. So that's a design thing. You have to just look inside the tester to see whether or not it reads this file or not. If it's not reading this file, then your goal is to get rid of that file altogether. Data files sometimes exist, sometimes don't. They can be pictures. Usually they're like text or CSV files, but sometimes there's no data files at all. Okay? So that's the basic anatomy of how the files that I give you, how they work together. And so what you want to do is first make sure it works out of the box, meaning when you first download your bundle, you can either download like the individual files or the bundle, depending on how you have it up there on the internet, then you can download them and it should work. So what happens initially, like I said, you run the tester, your tester looks for the code here, and this code is stolen from the key. So when you first start, it should just work. If it does not work, then it's not a problem that you can resolve by adjusting the files. It means there's an installation problem or you have some package missing or something like that. If you get stuck at that point, ask me for help, because you're not going to resolve it by adjusting your project code. In your starter code, you have function headers, and you also have instructions in your detailed specifications. These should be consistent with each other, but you will be given a whole bunch of small functions that you are asked to write as a build-up to your main goal. Now, some students like to just jump ahead and do the main goal. You will not get full credit if you do it that way. You will be asked to rewrite your code, and that's kind of a pain. The purpose of giving you all these little build-ups is so that when you write the main one, it's much easier. So I've already pre-broken the project into little bits for you to help make your life easier. You want to remove your reliance on the key file. So this key file is, so you have whatever code over here is relying on your key file. You want to remove the reliance one bit at a time. The dependencies are there to help you, not to annoy you. Okay, so you only want to remove one at a time. The other thing is you can okay to have helper functions. And sometimes I even suggest non-required helper functions. You can have helper functions in here. That's okay. That's totally fine, as long as you satisfy the constraints that you created, the functions I asked you to create. Okay. Do not use globals without permission. Globals, no, you have to ask first. Do not use imports. Do not import anything unless told, unless given. Okay, so we can debate that, but if everybody's going to be allowed to import it, I will make an announcement to the whole class. It wouldn't just be one person. Okay, so in your starter code, the imports you are allowed are already provided. If you want to discuss the imports, it's going to be a group discussion basically, and then I would change the specifications for everyone. Do not import anything without permission. Okay, so your basic usual process is you want to download it, make sure everything works, all the tests should pass, break just one thing at a time. You don't break everything all at once, don't remove all the dependencies at once, just break one thing at a time, fix it until all the tests pass again, and then you repeat 2 and 3, 2 and 3, 2 and 3, repeat, 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 until you have no more key references. Then you remove every last key reference and the import, okay, because the import is the last thing you want to remove, is importing the key. Recheck again and again, okay? So one thing that has helped students is if you make a new folder and put all your code into a new folder, you get rid of the key, but you put the tester and your project code in there, and then you test it all by itself. It's a little trickier if it's a tester that depends on the key. In that case, you need to keep the key in there, but at least get rid of any extraneous stuff that isn't part of the discussion, because as you work, you create a whole bunch of files, and what happens is there's a lot of pick code lying around, and often students don't realize that they're reading my key. They think that they're standing alone. They don't realize that they're actually still reading the key, and then they turn it in and they get 0 points because they just started the project by reading my key, and they're like, but I wrote all this stuff, and I'm like, but you are still reading my key, so no. So you have to remove all references to the key. Okay, so the various modes you can use, you can just run the tester code to see if there are errors in your code. That's your most common mode. This is your most common process. However, you can just play with the finished code at any point. Now, do not do this instead of or in lieu of reading the specifications. This is in addition to reading the specifications so that you can get a concrete feeling for what the code is supposed to do. You can run your own code at any point. Of course, you know how to do that. Now, the advice is do not delete anything from the tester. If you do, download a new copy of the tester. Use comments if you want to disable parts of the tester temporarily, but usually the reason why people want to disable parts of the tester is because they remove the dependencies on the key early. So don't remove the dependencies until you're ready to. Okay? So usually if you do things in the order I've suggested, you won't get into that mess. But if you do and you don't feel like downloading a new copy and putting all the dependencies back in, if you need to temporarily disable something, at least don't delete it. Just comment it out. Okay. I'm going to attempt to download this package and see if it works. So hopefully it will work. This is just Numerical Computing Project 2, but it doesn't actually matter. I'm just not going to look at the specifics of this project at this moment. I'm just going to show you how the process works. Okay, so you go to the project and you say, okay, I can download all this stuff, but I'm going to download a bundle. Okay, I'm going to just download the whole bundle. You can download the files. In this case, I've given them to the students individually and as a bundle. And I'm going to download it. And so I have a zip of some sort. And I'm going to, here's where it ended up. I'm just going to, actually, my project 2, you probably don't have to do that. You probably don't have crazy Linux running on your computer. Okay, so I'm going to just extract it here and see it goes in its own subdirectory or folder, and then all those files are in there. So in this case, since I just downloaded it, I'm using Python 3.8, so I'm going to delete the 3.7 key because I don't need it. You delete whichever key you don't want and keep the one you want, and I'm going to rename it. Get rid of the 3.8 or the 3.7 because the program is expecting it to just be called PR2_key. Okay, now I'm ready to begin my work, and I just work at the command line. I'm not recommending that. That's just the habit I have. You can do whatever you like. Okay, so I'm going to pause this for a sec. Okay, so my instructions are right here. I don't need them right now because it's not relevant to our discussion. And here's additional information. And now I'm going to go in and see if this just works. I'm going to say, what version of Python am I using? I'm using 3.8.2. That's right. So I should say Python3 and project2 test.py, and if everything works, I'm just going to get, in this case, I get a graphic. That's not always the case. So in this particular tester, it sprouts a graphic to reassure you. But what you're looking for success is you're looking for this stuff to all be happy. You're looking for a whole bunch of little dots. Those dots in this OK means that the first test passed. The test called eval poly, there were subsections. Each subsection gets some dots. And then at the end, each thing ran. There's 3 tests. Okay. If this did not succeed, it would have referenced a line number. It would have referenced a line number, and you could go to the line number and figure out which test is failing. So for example, if problem 2A, don't worry about the name of it except to find it. Okay, so in this case, if it says you're on line 33, you can say, aha, my eval poly, when I send it 1, 1, -2 as a vector and 5 as the second argument, that whole thing should be less than 0. So you can just look at the tester and see what it is that's being tested. And some of these things will look a little more cryptic to you, but some of them are just really, really obvious. If you see like, okay, zip, maybe you don't know what zip means, so you're not going to necessarily know what that test is doing. But most of these tests are things you're going to be able to figure out. np.pi is obviously over 4. That's obviously pi over 4. Do not simply patch over your code so that that particular test works. So you need to read the tester for advice, but don't just patch the code so that only the tester works. Because if you do that, you will not receive full credit. Unless, I mean, if your patch actually is more generally useful, that's fine. But don't make your patches don't make your code so narrowly focused on making just this tester work, or you will not receive full credit, or you'll be asked to rewrite. Okay, so what you can do is, for example, I'm going to mess up this code. Eval poly, I'm going to say return 0, just because I'm going to break this. I'm going to comment that out. Now, don't rely on comments for your final submission. Just actually delete them. But while you're working, you probably just want to comment it out in case you change your mind and want to return that dependency back again. So then I'm over here and I can say something like, okay, let me run the tester again. It should break. Oh, see, whoa, what a mess. Like, this is totally wrong. Okay, that is not what I expected to see. Okay, so it says we had a failure. It doesn't mean necessarily everything is okay. Well, in this case, it failed the first test. It passed the second 2 tests. So somehow it managed. Often when you write a bug that bad, you'll just break everything. But anyway, so there you go. So now I can simply like work on my code until it works, and then I can run the tester again, and then the tester is happy again. All right, so that's what you want to do. You want to break, fix, break, fix, break, fix. You don't want to break everything at once. You just want to break one thing at a time and fix until it's fixed, and then go back and break the next thing. Once you've removed all these returns or commented out all these dependencies on the key, then you can actually delete them. And you also want to eventually delete this line right there, okay, before you turn things in. You do also want to just make sure that the environment you're in is clean. There aren't a whole bunch of extraneous files that might be helping you unbeknownst to you. So that's what you want to do. And I think that's enough. The other comments I would make are going to be specific to this project. So I think that's enough of the introductory, how the workflow goes. That should be enough of that. And so if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to ask me.